Hey, how's it going?
What now, John?
Look what I can do with my mind.
What the hell was that?
A little bit of culture.
Okay.
So here we are in Blender. I've camera mapped my image using F-Spy, and I'm going to press Shift A and add a plane. This plane is going to be my cloth. Now G plus X to move it along the X-axis, G plus Z to move it up along the Z-axis, and rotate it around RX90. Now let's scale it using S and S plus Z to scale along the Z-axis, and that should be pretty good for our cloth. Now what we need to do is click the cloth, go into edit mode by pressing tab, and you'll see there's 4 vertices. If you right click, you'll be able to subdivide, make sure it's about 10. So in order to make this cloth appear like a ghost is kind of holding them, we need to actually select a few of these vertices and pin them up. So if we hold shift and actually select a few of these vertices on that side and that side, and then we go to the little green icon on the bottom right hand side, we can add a new vertex group. Press plus and rename that to hand pins. Click assign so that you actually assign those vertices to that group. Now if we go back into object mode, we can add some physics to our cloth. So go to the physics tab and make sure you add cloth. Now the higher your quality steps, the better looking your mesh will be, but it will take a little bit longer to actually process, but it looks better when you render it. So we're going to leave that at 8. Your tension, you do not want this cloth to be too tense, so let's make that 5, as well as the compression 5. The stiffness, leave all those at 5 like mine. Now let's go right down lower to the bottom where we'll see our shape and our collisions. We also want to make sure that the self collisions is enabled so the cloth doesn't go through itself. And the quality steps you should add a little bit higher because it means your iterations for collisions are more. It does slow it down, but it looks better. So make that 10. Now remember that group of pins we created earlier. If you go to the shape and you click that little drop down, you'll see hand pins. We want to select that under that shape properties. The next thing we're going to do is add a material. So click on your material tabs, click new. Make sure you find the velvet BSDF. That's the one, and choose a color that you like, maybe a blue. Drag the sigma down because that will give you a slightly better looking cloth, around 0.3. If we play this animation back, we'll see our pins actually hold the cloth up, which is exactly what we wanted. Let's move our cloth out the way by pressing G plus Y. And now we're going to go Shift A and add a new mesh, which will be our floor, plus the little side walls. We're going to add a plane. If you press Tab on your keyboard, it'll take you into edit mode, and then press 2 to go into edge select mode. Choose that vertex and press G plus X to actually move it along the X-axis, and now we need to go towards the Y-axis, G plus Y, and G plus Y to move it back again, and the last one, G plus X, to move it in the opposite direction. Now we have our floor. Choose the edge and press E plus Z to move it along the Z-axis, and E plus Y to just make that little wall. E plus Z again, and E plus X to move it along that wall. Now we'd like to add a table for our cloth to collide with. So go Shift A and add a mesh and a circle. Press G and Z to move it up, and G and X to move it along the X-axis. Press G and Y to move it just underneath that table, and G and Z to move it up. Scale it using S. Make sure you position the table roughly around the middle. Perspective is quite difficult to get right, so go out of your camera every now and then to make sure it actually lines up correctly. Now go into edit mode by pressing tab on your keyboard. Go into vertex select mode by pressing 1 and press A and press F to fill that entire cube. Now press E plus Z to actually extrude the table slightly upwards. If you want to make sure your normals are facing the right direction, make sure you click face orientation. Blue is the right color. Now go back into your camera view and just position that table. We're going to create 3 or 4 different legs now. So we go Shift A and we add I think for this we're going to add a cylinder. Using S on your keyboard, scale it down and press G and X to move it along the X-axis. Always double check your perspective by moving out of your camera. That looks about right, so press G and Y to move it along the Y-axis and G and Y to move it back again just to line it up with the legs of the table. Now scale it using S and G and Z to move it up, scale it again all the way down, and you can press G and Z to move it down, and now we have the first leg of our table. Always check your orientation. What we can do now is press Shift plus D to duplicate it, and then press G and Y to move it along and G and X to move it backwards. Now our table's starting to come together. We probably only need one more leg for the cloth to interact with, so Shift D and just move that around. The next thing to do is make sure collision is enabled on all the little separate objects, including the floor. Now we'd actually like to add an armature to control our cloth, so press Shift right click to change the 3D cursor, press Shift A and add a single bone. You can scale it using S to make it a little bit bigger. Now go into edit mode by pressing Tab and press Shift D to duplicate, move it along the X-axis with G and X. We'd like the cloth to move with the bones, so we need to parent it. Click the cloth and hold Shift, left click on the bones, press Ctrl P and choose with automatic weights. This means if we move the bones, the cloth should move along with it after you've baked your animation. Now make sure your keyframe is right at the beginning and choose that little keyframe option is colored in. Now move the timeline to about 160 and move the bones along pressing G and Y. Now if you select the cloth and go to your collision section, scroll down, choose delete bake and click bake again. At this stage our collision works, but our cloth still looks a little jagged. We can fix this by adding a modifier to the cloth, so select the cloth and go to your modifiers. We'd like to add a subdivision surface modifier which will add a bit more geometry in between the vertices. Make sure your render and your viewport are set to around 3. Right click and also shade smooth on your cloth. Now we need to go back to the physics properties, delete the bake and rebake everything by clicking bake, and if we play it back now we get a much smoother result and the collision with the floor is even a lot better. Since we don't want the table and the floors to be rendered, we need to enable shadow catcher for each of the individual items. This makes sure they are able to receive a shadow and interact with the cloth but not rendered. Notice our cloth looks a little bit noisy. We can fix this by going to the layers properties on the right hand side and choosing denoising data. Going to the composition tab at the top, click use nodes, press Shift A and search for denoise data. Now connect up the anebo, the normal and the noisy image and reconnect it up back to the composition image. Now choose an output path that you want to save your animation to, and remember to go to the film properties and change transparency on. Make sure you press Shift A and add a sun and make sure the strength is roughly 10. This will light your scene up nicely. If you render now, you'll see the shadow casted on top of that table, but it doesn't actually render the table. That's exactly what we want. If you overlay this over your video, it looks really good with shadows and everything.